Welcome to the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast, where each week we speak with brands, icons, innovators, and trailblazers within the fly fishing industry, exploring both the successes and failures they've encountered along the way to become who they are today. But first, if you have not yet subscribed to the podcast or joined our email list, please do so by going to the flyfisherinsiderpodcast.com, or you can also find us on Instagram at Fly Fisher Insider Podcast. Now let's begin. Welcome to the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. Today our guest is Lewis Cahall, the guy behind Gink and Gasoline. Gink and Gasoline has been providing fly anglers with daily blogs, articles, and even hosted destination trips. Lewis is known for his outspoken personality, along with a unique writing style. Here today to tell us more about Gink and Gasoline is Lewis Cahall. Lewis, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you. I know we've talked a lot off air. Why don't you give us a little insight into who Lewis Cahall is?
Oh, he's a complicated dude.
That is true. I can agree with you on that.
So I spent most of my career as an advertising photographer. You know, back in the early 2000s. The advertising business just sort of started unraveling at the head of the Great Recession. I found myself with a lot more time on my hands to fish. You know, I've fished my whole life since I was, 8 years old. And I started spending more and more time on the water, and I started carrying a camera. People just got interested in the photos. And I got talked into putting a few on my website, and people started coming to them. And I don't know. The fishing business kind of found me, you know? So I was just this dude running around with a camera, taking pictures of fishing, and people were into it. And it created this demand. And so me and a buddy just had this idea of starting a fly fishing blog, not with any real sense of where it was going, and we started Gink and Gasoline. And for some reason, it was just right place, right time. And it just kind of resonated with people. And it took off. So I found myself really fortunate to have this very unexpected second career in fly fishing, where, really my job is just to go out and do the cool stuff that all of us want to do, and then get to share that, with the folks that can't, So it's kind of a dream job, and it just sort of fell in my lap, to be honest.
You know what, Lewis? I agree. It is a dream job, but let's look at Gink and Gasoline as itself, because it's also a business, right? So take me back to the moment when you're all in, you and your partner, you started this brand, you got some of your blogs going. What, did you decide right then and there, we got to write a blog every day? I mean, that's a ton of content, and you've been doing this for eight years. And you're writing a blog every day, your pictures, you got, reviews on products, you got a demo, you're crazy. I'm not even going to get into the traveling aspect at this point of the show yet, but how did you guys, and when did you guys realize this is a business? We're getting a paycheck from this now. Walk me through that. Walk us through.
Yeah, right. Well, it kind of had to at some point. Like I said, we didn't really have any expectations, of what it would do. We had the site up for a couple of months, and it just happened. The site launched on July 4th of 2011, and we had put a lot of work into it up front before then. It's just kind of my nature to, I have to feel prepared for things, So I actually went to night school and took classes in writing. And I started banking this sort of stockpile of images and stuff to use for the site. When we put the site up, we weren't savvy enough to have any kind of analytics on it. And I built the original site myself, and that's really, not in my skill set. It was, it was very bare bones. I just took
mine too,
and threw it together. And so we didn't have any idea if anybody was reading it, really. But the launch kind of coincided, just fortunately, with the IFTD show. And I would go to the IFTD show every year, the big fly fishing industry trade show, because at that point, a lot of my photography clients were folks in the fly fishing industry. So I would go to, show my work and talk to people about doing photo shoots for them and whatever. So I had cards printed up. I just gave out a bunch of cards at IFTD. So it just sort of took a life of its own. And it was up a couple of months before we figured out how to use Google Analytics, which is I say I feel incredibly stupid and naive saying that now, but like we didn't even know what Google Analytics was. So we got that up and running, and when we did, there were about 30,000 people a month reading the site already, which we never expected. So in my preparation, I had done a weekend workshop on running a blog, and the gal that taught the workshop had said, if you want to be recognized by the search engines and you want to be taken seriously, you have to post content every day for the first 30 days. Right. And we said, all right, well, we can do that. And if 30 days is good, then 60 days is better. So we'll do a post every day for the first 60 days. And, we just, I don't know, we were very serious about, just doing what we said we'd do. And so we did that. And it was about that 60-day point when we got the Google Analytics up, and we also started a newsletter, And I remember, first of all, we're shocked by how many people are reading. And then I remember the first person to sign up for the newsletter was Simon Gosworth. And the instant thought that went through my head was, holy shit, cool. Simon's reading my blog. And I'd given him a card at IFTD, but I didn't expect, anyway, I don't know what I expected, but to be frank, it scared the shit out of both of us. We're just kind of like, oh my God, well, this is serious. We can't screw it up now. People are paying attention. So there was never this plan that we were going to publish every day, 365 days a year. We were just going to publish every day for the first 60 days, and it worked. So we never stopped doing it.
Lewis, let me ask you this. When did you get that first bankable paycheck in the business?
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's the other thing we never planned for, because they were at first, and for the first couple of years, we had nothing to sell, literally nothing to sell. And it was only when we redesigned the site that we had this idea, well, it had gotten to be such a huge job that it was taking over my life, right? And so if I was going to continue to do it at the level that I wanted to do, it had to pay for itself, right? Just even the travel and the fishing that you have to do to produce that amount of content, it costs a lot of money. And, neither of us have a lot of money, I was not one of these smart people that, banked a lot of money in my first career. And it, quite frankly, those were pretty tough times. We were kind of, chugging through the recession at that point. And so anyway, I was like, well, we got to figure out a way for this to pay for itself, And so we redesigned the site and actually paid a developer to do some work on it. And we created space to sell advertising. Tim Rajeff was the first one. He bought space for Airflow, and ad space for Airflow was our very first advertiser. And then Sims and Orvis, followed very quickly after that. And I remember saying to my partner at the time, and that's how we have Fight Club 7 days a week. It was like that instant that we got that first paycheck, was just like, oh my God, this could actually be something. And the crazy thing is that I'm nobody's salesman. I'm the worst guy in the world. In fact, ask any of my clients and they'll tell you the worst thing about dealing with Lewis is getting him to actually invoice me.
Great business model, Lewis.
Right. That's seriously that's ridiculous. But it's always, it's such a crazy thing to keep the site fed. It's the monster, it just gobbles content. And so just keeping it up to date is in itself so crazy that stuff like that ends up getting pushed back. But to this day, I've never made a sales call. Everyone who advertises on the site has come to me, and that's been amazing. And I've had good experiences and I've had bad experiences. I've had some people stiff me for money that they owe me, and just refuse to pay and just be idiots about it. But I've had really wonderful experiences from not just from anywhere, but from the very best companies in the business who, and I'll quote Tom Rosenbauer here. While I was talking to Tom about stats and readership and stuff. And Tom's like, look, we don't care how many people are reading it. We dig what you do and we want to support it, and to have people backing you like that is just, that's just a gift beyond me being able to.
You know what, Lewis? It's kind of like the sign that you've made it. So let me ask you this. All these brands are advertising with you and they're using your platform as a way to expand their brand and get their knowledge out there. And then what they reach out to you saying, hey, like, do you want to
Yeah.
do a review on our product? Like, walk me through that, like how that'll evolve as well.
Yeah, it doesn't happen as much as you would think, honestly. It comes along every now and then. You'll get a message from somebody, and more often than not, what it is we go to IFTD, and one of the things we do pretty
Hmm.
consistently is our product review videos at IFTD, where we go and we just do a little short video. They're not even really reviews because we haven't had a time to test the products. It's just we
Is it
go
like a
around to the
highlight
different
kind of?
manufacturers, and here's the stuff they have coming for
Yeah.
next year. Yeah, it's just kind of an introduction. It's like, here's
Cool.
what's going to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
new from
Yeah.
Orvis next year.
I've
Here's
seen
what's going to
those.
be
Yeah,
new
I've
from
seen those.
Stems next year, right? And so that gives us the opportunity to see what's coming up. And then, of course, we get to cast rods. We get to play with some of the gear. And that's more often than not, that's when the conversations happen about, I'd really love to test this when it comes along, you know?
Hmm.
And we also, we do reviews for people who are not clients. We have people send us gear to review all the time. And it's interesting that, people are pretty cynical these days. And, you'll write a review and, of course, the scourge of the internet, this the internet troll, there's always going to be somebody that's going to, oh, another glowing review of a product somebody didn't pay
Yeah.
for. And that's the perception people have of it. But at least with us, that's not the case. I have a pretty strict review policy, and it's published. If you just Google Gink and Gasoline review policy, it's on the site. And it says this: I write honest reviews about products that I have used. I don't review things that I don't like. If you send me a product, I'm not going to write a bad review of it. And the reason I'm not going to do that is because I think there's way too much negativity in fly fishing. There's way too many people out there going, this sucks, that sucks. If I could do one thing to change fly fishing, it would be just to remove the word sucks from the vocabulary. So I'm not going to be that voice. I'm not going to be
I'm
another
gonna
guy
ask
that
you
gets
that.
on.
I'll ask you that
I'm sorry.
question later. But
Okay, yeah, I can expand on that for sure. But I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go in there and trash products. There's enough of that. But if I've used something enough that I really have a sense that I can talk about it in a way that's going to help people make an informed decision, or help shed some light on it, something that's going to be substantive, then I'll do that. And people get frustrated with me because it takes a long time. If you send me a product to review, you might wait 6 months for that review to show up.
mhm.
But I don't go cast a rod at the casting pond and write a review on it because that's meaningless. And I'm not interested in doing that. I do think that, integrity is important. And
Yeah.
I think your readers know. I think people have really good noses for
Mhm.
bullshit,
That's kind of where I was going
and
with all that, Lewis. Was like,
yeah,
was your review policy, and I know we've talked about it before as well. How strict you are, saying, like, I'm not going to write it, I'm not going to do it. I just, let someone else do it, because it
yeah,
doesn't fall in line with your values and philosophy, right? Which
yeah.
is super respectable.
And I've had some pretty big players in the industry walk away
Yeah,
from the site because
yeah.
of that.
That was my
You know,
next question. You know, obviously it
yeah,
creates waves, and obviously people with big deep pockets
sure,
say, well, if you're not going to write a review, we're not going to advertise on your site, or we're not going to support you, and
right.
like creating waves in a way where you're just like, walk, like, what's the feeling? Tell me about that. Like, tell us how you deal with that or how it happens.
Well, it's fine with me. And I've done just the opposite of that too, where I've had people advertising with the site where I've said, you know what, I don't think it's a fit, and I don't think your brand is in line with the values of the
Mhm.
site, and not offered them space again the next year.
Is that because they don't get enough clicks, or like through the analytics?
No, 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 no. It's generally because of something they've done. It's because of the way they've behaved about
Okay. Yeah.
something, right? Um, and it's not that I'm out there to bash anything about it. Probably the real root cause is that I'm just not a very smart businessman. My motivation for starting this was never to make a bunch of money. I never had an expectation to make a bunch of money. There came a point where it needed to pay for
I think
itself, and
that's like,
and there'll probably come a point in my life where I'm sorry that I didn't start out to make a lot of money. But it's always just been more important to me that, I look at Gink and Gasoline as a community. I don't look at it as a website. I look at it, as a living, breathing community in fly fishing. And that's important to me, and that's sort of my first priority in everything is what's good for the community, you know.
So I agree with you. It is a community. It's a voice within the community. It's something that's authentic that, the readers, not everyone's going to like it. Not everyone's
Yeah.
not going to like it.
Yeah, everyone does not like it. I would be very clear about that. Everyone
You know,
specifically does not like me. I'll be very clear about that.
so like with this community, like what are some of the fans saying? What are the fans reaching out to you saying to you that motivates you or gets you happy? And on the flip side of that, what are the fans saying that reach out with the negativity, saying no, we don't want, like what's going on with that?
Well, I'll tell you that story first because that's the funny part. Um, I have literally had death threats. I had a
Are you
guy.
serious?
I hope he's listening. God, I hope he's listening. I had a guy in British Columbia threaten my life for writing about steelhead conservation because I wrote an article where I said you should.
I'm based in British Columbia, and we are not the ones that said that. So.
Are you? No, it was a guy in Terrace.
Oh.
I got his email somewhere, but because I wrote an article about how you should never drag steelhead up onto the rocks because they can, give them head trauma and they can swim away and look fine and then die later on. And I said you should always, land your steelhead in knee deep water. That if you,
I get behind that.
yeah, and if you can't do that, then then just let the fish go, right? Don't if you can't land him without injuring him, it doesn't matter if you touch the fish or not.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got the fish there where you can make a grab at him, that's good enough for me. It's good enough for anybody. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, but people get this guy. I guess that's how he does it, and so he got all worked up about it. And I get stuff like that all the time, and it doesn't matter what like I'll write something about the pebble.
So hold on, just to back it up. So he sits there and says, "If you write about this, I'm going to kill you."
He said, "If I ever come to Terrace, he's going to kill me."
Oh,
which I don't know. I'm going to be back up in BC.
I was going to say, like, I think your hosted destinations go up to BC as well.
I used to joke that I was going to, when I was younger, that I was just going to rent out the Cowboy Bar in Jackson Hole one day a year, and yet let everybody that wanted to kick my ass come. Like it's just line up at the door. I'll rent the place out, and we'll do it just like every which way but loose.
That's funny.
But it's funny the stuff that it doesn't matter if you have an opinion, regardless of whether you're right or wrong, there's somebody that's going to be offended.
Always. It's because you're doing something, right?
Yeah, that's right. And like one of the other things that has drawn so much lightning for me is I wrote an article about using Coca Cola to stop bleeding in a fish's gills, right? Like, so I don't know if you've ever heard that if you had a fish and its gill got cut and it was bleeding to death, that you could pour Coca Cola down its throat and it would cauterize the gills and stop the bleeding.
Never did I know that. Yeah,
right. Well, so it's I had heard that a bunch of times, right? But so I was out one day, caught a nice brown trout, and this is on a piece of water that a buddy of mine owns the place. It's private water, but it's not like pay to play water. It's just my buddy owns this creek, right?
Yeah,
and it's a really nice brown trout, lives in this hole. And I was lucky. I caught this fish, great fish, but its gill got nicked and it's bleeding. And we had our lunch with us, and I had a Coca Cola, so I tried it. Technically, it was a Diet Coke. I don't think that makes a difference. But I poured it down the fish's throat, and sure enough, it stopped the bleeding just instantly. Fish swam away, and I know the fish survived because I saw it out there again. Later on, it's not too. It's not like there's a dozen big brown trout in this hole, right? So anyway, and that's cool, and it was a huge thing. Like that was one of the first big, like 80,000 people read that the first day.
Yeah.
I got a call from some radio station that wanted to interviewed me on the radio about it. It was just one of those big things everybody got into, and I get so much heat about that. I've had scientists write me and explain to me why it works, and then I've had scientists hold my feet to the fire and say, that's terrible for fish. You should never, all the chemicals in Coca-Cola and which is a ridiculous argument because the fish doesn't swallow it. It runs out his gills, but it's like, yeah, I'm giving those fish type 2 diabetes pouring Coke down there. I don't know, but whatever. I did it. it saved the fish's life. I saw it happen. I wrote about it. I don't really care what anybody thinks about it. But like, and I love them, and they're doing
Yeah.
great work. But the guys from Keep 'em Wet, from keepemwet.org, who I love, and we're like a media partner with them and stuff. But they got all over me about that.
Yeah.
How can you suggest that people? I'm like, the fish is dying, man. You know, it's worth a shot. But anyway, so yeah, you get a lot of negative stuff, but you also get a lot of positive stuff too. And when I get emails all the time. You know, the trolls are the ones you're going to see comment on the site, but I get emails from people all the time telling me, you know, I learned it's, and it's weird because Gink and Gasoline's been online long enough now that I got an email today from a guy says, I learned to fish when I was a kid reading Gink and Gasoline, and I just took my first job as a trout guide. And
Yeah.
that's incredibly rewarding. And it's weird. I never, you know, if there was one thing that I might do differently about Gink and Gasoline is I would be very tempted not to use my name. And that was, you know, we talked about that at the start.
Why? Like,
just to write under a pen name
yeah.
or something, right? Just to not be Lewis Cahill on
Yeah.
the site.
Yeah.
And we talked about that. And the reason that we did it, and it started with, you know, was just the idea that, you know, I stand behind what I write. You know, I was like, I'm not going to hide behind, you know, some assumed name or anything. I stand behind what I put on the site. I'm proud of it. You know, yeah, I'll use my name. But I'm honestly a little uncomfortable with how much attention that gets because I never wanted to create a site about me. Right. I was not the person who wanted, you know, I wasn't trying to create something around me. I was trying to create something around a community, you know. And the first time I got like recognized in an airport freaked me out a little bit, you know. And that still happens a little bit, like somebody, you know, buy me a beer in a restaurant or something like that, which is awesome. You know, it's really cool to connect with people that way.
Fly fishing celebrity status.
It's weird. It's just weird, dude. It's just weird. But the one of the nicest things that's ever happened to me, and I've gotten a handful of these emails. So I'm gonna paraphrase. But they all said roughly the same thing. But during the Iraq War, I got a handful of emails from veterans that said, Gink and Gasoline is the only thing that got me through being over here.
Wow.
And there's nothing that means more to me than that.
Yeah, that's that, you know,
that was
to
incredible.
take a moment and just reflect on that is it's phenomenal, Lewis, for sure. I mean, you've touched so many lives, myself included. I just want to follow up before I shift gears here. Is any marketing directors from Coca Cola reached out to you yet or no?
What do you know about this?
Are you guys shooting a commercial for Coca Cola?
What do you know about this? Seriously.
What's that?
What do you know about this?
Nothing.
Where are you going with this Coca Cola thing?
You know, I'm just thinking if anyone's listening, right? You know what I mean? If they're gonna say, "Hey,
okay, dude, you're gonna die. You are gonna die because this is the weirdest coincidence." Right before I jumped on the phone with you,
yes,
I got a call from a good one of my oldest fishing buddies. I know my oldest fishing buddy, right? Who lives up on he's the dude that owns the piece of property I was talking about where we caught the fish and gave it to Cook, right? And he calls me. He's like, check your email. And I looked at the email, and there's a store up there that's kind of like a little, you know, it's like a little country store, but they also sell fish and stuff because it's a fishing area and bait and all this stuff. And it's changed hands. It's just gone under new ownership. And there is a huge, like, I don't know, 4 by 8 foot Coca Cola ad on the front of the store featuring one of my photos that I did not sell to Coca Cola.
Awesome.
And he asked the dude, where did you get this? And he's like, Coca Cola gave it to me. So I found out literally 30 minutes ago that Coca Cola has stolen one of my images off the internet and is making ads out of it. And the crazy thing is, it's a picture of the dude who called me holding a fish.
So let me ask you this. After your $1 million lawsuit, is there still going to be a Gink and Gasoline? Are you still going to produce daily content for us?
I am.
Or are you selling the business?
Coca-Cola is going to get a call. Isn't that crazy that happens all the time? I mean, all the time. friends will send me something. It's usually just some random website or, you know, like I have a long history with the Thomas and Thomas
Hmm.
brand, and several owners ago that started when Thomas and Thomas lifted 12 images off my website to put on theirs. And we had to call up and have that conversation. And I have a lot of Thomas and Thomas rods now for that reason.
I bet.
But yeah, right, and it's one of those things. It's copyrighted material. It is how I make my living. It is. And the weird thing is that like you can kind of, you know, some numbskull who doesn't know any better, you kind of you get over. And I'm never abusive about that. Like I'm not going to sue Coca Cola for $1 million, right? I just ask for what's fair.
Hmm.
Um,
6 million.
but Coca Cola knows better because when I was in the commercial world, full on, I did a photography for Coca Cola. My wife, who was an art director on the Coca Cola account, I mean, I know that brand. They know better, and of course, they have no idea that's my.
I mean, they
image,
do. They have people in place that are supposed to do their homework for this reason.
Oh, dude, they've got lawyers. They got a whole building full of
Yeah.
lawyers.
Like someone didn't do their job. So
That's bizarre that you asked me about Coca Cola, but yeah,
that's just ironic, isn't it? I like that. So I
we
love the
did do
irony.
yeah, it is weird. It is. We did do a BFGoodrich tire commercial one time, which was a lot of fun. And I think
Gink and Gasoline did?
yeah. That's back when Kent was involved. He and I did this shoot with them, and they did this thing called Playground Earth, which was a rally race. And so they took
Yeah.
one set of Goodrich tires and 4 different vehicles, and they picked 4. And you can't see me making air quotes, but I'm making air quotes. 4 teams of adventure athletes, and I make air quotes because everybody else in this thing actually are adventure athletes, and that in no way describes us, right? So it was 3 teams of adventure athletes and these 2 numbnuts that fly fish, right? They were in this thing, and
I like it.
and so what they did was they gave each of us a vehicle, and they said, whatever you want to do, whatever your adventure is that you want to do, we'll fund it. You've got a week to do it, and we're sending a film crew with you to film it. And then the way it worked was, as each team would go and do their thing, they'd come back in, we'd meet the other team, and they'd hand off the tires. So it was the same tires they'd put on another 4-wheel drive vehicle. And we had a Raptor pickup, and one of the other teams had a Jeep, and one of them had an FJ Cruiser, and so it was awesome. We worked with Kyle Strait, who's mountain bikers run the Red Bull Rampage, I think, more than anybody in history. On the mountain biking team, and they had kayakers and they had mountain climbers, and then they had us, and we went to the Oahe River. And see, now people are jumping up and down, pulling their hair out and screaming right now because I said that name. but that's where we went because they had to shoot like during April, and it was runoff everywhere, or maybe it was May, I forget, but anyway, it was runoff everywhere, and so that was the one spot we could find that the water was fishable, and there were big brown trout in there. And so we went, and they sent this film crew, really, really talented bunch of guys called Camp 4 Collective.
Okay.
And these dudes, they're based out of Salt Lake City. And they used to be, they were all North Face pro athletes. And North Face built this film crew. They sent their climbers and stuff to film school and taught them to shoot videos and stuff. And they're some really talented folks. And so they just sort of branched off and started their own thing. And so we were super fortunate to work with these guys. So it's me and my buddy on a fishing trip, and we've got a crew of like 20 people. We've got sound guys, and I think there were 5 different cameras. They've got drones with red cameras on them, zooming all around. It was crazy. And they must have spent $1 million on this thing. It was nuts. And they had all these, it was just so, because they're all like mountain climbers and stuff like that, and they're super talented, but they have no idea what fishing is about, right? So like we spend all this time shooting a tire commercial, and then like literally the last day they're like, okay, now catch a big brown trout, and the weather had turned ugly, and we're trying to figure this place out, and we're like, what the hell? And we really thought it was just going to be a disaster. And then just at the 11th hour, just the last like 2 hours of the last day, and the weather changed, and the fish turned on, and we just caught some awesome fish and got some great fish footage. And so the whole thing turned out great. And it's on the site. If you go to Gink and Gasoline and you go to the How We Roll page, our episode of it is on there. The video's on there, so you can watch it.
Definitely, I'll make sure I put that in the show notes. That's kind of cool. I like that. So, Lewis, I would definitely want to shift. I want to shift to the hosted trips. You host trips, but you do it differently, and you do it in style. Why don't you tell us about that?
I'm leaving Saturday for the Bahamas.
I know.
I'm going. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because this is another thing that just happened to me. Years ago, a good friend of mine owned some lodges, and he was the one that brought it up. He was like, I get a lot of people come to me and want to host trips, and most of them can't pull it off. And he's like, I think you really would do a good job of this. I think you should try it. And so he kind of held my hand through it and really helped me get into the business. And unfortunately, he sold his company, and but that all worked out great because now I'm working. I work a lot with Oliver White, his two operations, Bears Lodge in South Andros and Abaco Lodge in Abaco. And I work with Andy's Drifters down in Argentina, and Parana on the Fly for Golden Dorado, and Fish the Swing, Kimsquit Bay Lodge on the Dean, and Deschutes Steelhead Adventures on the Deschutes River. So we do a lot of different destinations, and we're opening up some more. We're going to be opening up some domestic trips, and they're all a little different. But the thing that I do the most of is the bonefish, because it's my favorite fish. I don't, it's just why mince words. I love catching bonefish. And I do a lot of it, and it's how I started doing the hosted trips. I've been doing it for maybe 10 years now. And the idea that we came up with was to do this bonefish school. So there's some educational component to it, right? And it really, my whole idea was this will help guys who are wanting to get into saltwater, wanting to make that transition from freshwater to salt, or they're curious about it, they're intimidated by it, they don't know how to get started. And they just need help. And so we'll go down for a week. They get a chance to immerse themselves into fish, and I've got some. I do some presentations.
Sorry, where are they going down to? Which lodge are they going down to?
To Bears Lodge at South Andros.
Yeah.
And I'm there 6 weeks this year, and headed out Saturday for 2 weeks. And this will be the end of their season. They'll close down after we're done. I have some presentations I do that kind of help, sort of ease folks into it. We start off the first day with just the real basics, and then, we start diving in a little deeper and talking about, fish behavior and successful presentations and just all the details that add up to, to being a successful saltwater angler. And so the whole idea is that, once you've had that week, you've had the information and you've had some of the experience, and you're on your way to being a self-sufficient saltwater angler. Now, of course, you can't do that in a week, but it gives you the tools
Correct.
you need to do it. Oliver is awesome. First of all, he runs just an amazing operation down there. It's just the nicest lodge I've ever been to, and the guys are amazing. And they give me special pricing, so it's about $2,000 cheaper to go on my trip than it is to go on a regular week. Plus, you get the educational stuff, which is all an opt-in. I mean, I have a lot of folks that just come year after year and do it again and again, who don't need any of the educational stuff, and they just drink and have fun while I'm doing that, or they come in and heckle me while I'm doing it. And which is awesome.
I think I'm gonna have to do that and just write a blog about it. I need content, so.
Dude, you totally should come. It's so cool. And the thing about it is, for me, it's awesome for a couple of reasons. It's awesome because, I get to go down and do the thing that I love and share it with people, which is, that's kind of how I got into this whole thing anyway. And I really get to connect with that community because I know that Gink and Gasoline is a community, right? And it's out there, and I get the feedback to some extent. But it's easy for you to think, that I'm out there on this, jet setter lifestyle, and I'm fishing every day, and I'm, half my life is in the corner of, the spare room in my house staring at the computer. That's the nuts and bolts of what it takes to make this site happen.
Yeah.
So if I'm not I never get to fish at home. People ask me, where should I go fish in Georgia? I'm like, I don't know. I never get to fish here.
Yeah, you know what, Lewis, I like how you say the honesty about that, how it is, because like someone that runs a podcast, I can really relate to how much time is spent, and for the podcasting, editing, production, setting up dates. There's just so much crap behind the scenes. And then when I want to go fishing or I go away on a trip, like I gotta come back and I gotta have content cushioned, right? You gotta have that cushion, so you're always producing. Now I don't produce daily blogs or daily podcasts, and thank God I don't, because it is a ton of work. So,
well, it's funny. I sat on a panel one time with my good friend Tim Romano, who is a fabulous photographer, and he runs Angling Trade magazine.
I know Tim as well.
Yeah, Tim's a great dude. And Tim said something about, he was talking about my 365 day a year publication schedule. He said, I have no idea how to do it, how he does it. He said, actually, that's not true. I know exactly how he does it, and I want no part of it. And he's about the hardest working dude I know, so I took that as a real compliment.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy, like the amount. And I don't know if people, when they see that every day, every morning in your inbox, the email and the links to the blog, like it is a ton of work. So I want to get back to
well, I like work. I've always enjoyed it, and I tell people all the time that a lot of the reason we have Gink and Gasoline is because I'm an insomniac. I was up at 3:45 this morning on 3 hours sleep. And you can get a lot of stuff done.
Oh yeah, you can get your day done. You can get your day done before 5 o'clock. I get it. So I want to ask you. I want to circle back to the hosted trips, because it seems like, and I want your opinion on this, the outspoken opinion, of course.
Good, because
it seems like everyone is doing. It seems like everyone is doing a hosted trip.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like every which way that I go now, every fly shop's doing it. Everyone's doing it. Do you find that the market is becoming flooded with hosted trips, or it's confusing for a client? Like, where do you go? I mean, like, who's good, who's not? And you said earlier, because this is what leads me to this, you said earlier, hey, these people were doing a hosted trip, but they're not doing it well, right? Is what your buddy said when we first started this 10 years ago. You've got 10 years experience, but it turns out, like, everywhere I turn, or everyone you follow on a social media person's like, yeah, I'm going to start hosting trips.
Yeah.
Like, how is this affecting us?
I don't know, dude. All I can tell you is it's not affecting me at all, because I don't pay attention to it. I stay in my lane. I don't pay attention to what other people are doing. As far as like who's doing a good job or who's not, I mean, I think the thing really, hosted trips are great. And I think the real thing is that most people just don't understand what a hosted trip is, right? And I've had a lot of people kind of like come at it like, well, what's the angle? What's the, and like the angle is I get to go fishing for a week and it's awesome. And, there's no real angle to it. It's just, you pay the same thing that you'd pay to go on a regular trip. Or in the case of my trips, you actually paid less because I'm a good negotiator. And you get the same experience. Plus you have somebody there who should be adding value to the trip, right? They should be bringing something to the table, and I don't know. I work hard to do that. Everybody doesn't. I learned how to host trips with my buddy Bruce Chard. I started going with him, and I would hang out and shoot photos of Bruce, and I would kind of help entertain his guys and stuff like that. And Bruce is such a hard worker and such a brilliant dude, and just knows everything there is to know about fly fishing, right? So the one thing I can tell you is, if you're going to do a hosted trip and you're not going to do mine, you should do one of Bruce's, because he just is amazing. And so I learned from a guy who really cared about it and really did a good job at it and really worked hard. And so that was the way I saw how to do it. And now, as far as what other people are doing, I don't go on their trips, so I don't know. But I would say if you're thinking about going on a destination trip, some of the advantages to doing a hosted trip are that the host does the legwork for you, right? Figures out the stuff that you need to know. Some of it may be travel or stuff like that. They figure out the places to go and when to go, the fishing, so that, you're going to have good, consistent fishing. And they're there to help out with stuff. If it's, in the case of the Bonefish School, where I'm doing a lot of educational things, showing people how to, tie knots or tie flies or, whatever it is. Right. Or just, like, for example, you go to the Bahamas, you deal with some sketchy airlines and stuff. And we had a flight out of South Andros one time where they put none of the luggage on the airplane.
That sucks.
So we get to Nassau, nobody's luggage. They didn't put one bag on the airplane,
That sucks.
right? And yeah. And I've got, there are a bunch of guys standing here. They've got connections, to make and stuff. And they're like, oh, well, they must be coming soon. I'm like, no, you don't understand how stuff works over here. That airport closes as soon as the airport takes off. So your stuff is sitting on the runway unattended. Yeah, right. So I got on the phone, called up a buddy of mine who's the cop on the island, and got him to go over and sit with the bags, and paid the dude at the airline $100 to send another plane back over to get the bags, and everybody made their connections with their bags.
Yeah.
But if we'd sat around and been Americans about it and waited for somebody to do something, we'd never seen that stuff again.
Oh,
so
yeah.
There's a lot of reasons like that I think a hosted trip makes sense, and especially if you're not a real savvy destination traveler, if you haven't done a lot of it, or it makes sense to go with somebody who's figured out the bumps.
Definitely.
And if you're looking at that, I would just say that, try to find somebody that you jive with. Like if you've got a guide that you really like to fish with and they do hosted trips, then that's a great opportunity. Obviously I'd love to have anybody who's into Gink and Gasoline come on the trips. And one of the cool things about it is that, when you go to a lodge to fish, you can have weird experiences because you never know who's going to be there, and there's always somebody, there's always a troublemaker of one kind or another, right? And the nice thing about the G&G trips has been, I think, because the site has a real distinct point of view, it sort of self-selects, and we just get really great groups of anglers who are just about fishing and having a great time, and the groups just gel and are really cohesive, and people leave with friends. I've got 4 good buddies who met on my trips that fish all over the world together now. They do a bunch of my trips, and they're putting together trips of theirs. I'm going to Christmas Island with them on one of their trips next year, and they met doing my bonefish school in the Bahamas. So, yeah, it's cool. It's
all right, Lewis,
the best part of my job.
Question for you. You're outspoken.
Yeah, man.
The industry has sometimes said, Lewis is outspoken, Lewis's point of view, social media, which I know you're not active on. What do you say to that?
Yeah, well, I am active on some social media.
My apologies. Poor choice of words. Poor choice of words on that. But I'm just saying, I know you don't engage.
Yeah. No, I quit Facebook about a year and a half ago, and I had some really bad experiences on Facebook, and I got unfortunately, I didn't have enough sense to be real selective about who was my Facebook friends. I just was like, hey, if you're holding this was literally my rule was, if you're holding a fish in your Facebook photo, you're in. Unfortunately, not everyone who holds a fish is a good person. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to circle back to this. Hold that thought, because I'm going to circle back to that in a minute.
I like that.
And so I real quickly maxed out my friends. And this opened doors for me because of the way the Facebook algorithm works. That because if I've got 5,000 friends, and then the way the privacy settings are set up, my stuff was visible to all of their friends, and all the people that they followed. And so I ended up getting caught up and targeted in that whole Russian cyber troll thing, and just, oh my God, the hail of stuff that came down on me through social media was just insane. It was unbearable. And unfortunately, a lot of it was this manufactured, troll spam or whatever you call it. But unfortunately, there was enough of it that was, there were actual people in the fly fishing business who I knew that just, I'm not gonna say his name, but I had a well-known guide who has some products in the industry named after me go off on this long, obviously alcohol fired, like he had to have written me 4,000 words on Facebook message telling me how I didn't deserve to be in the fishing
I
industry, and
love
I just,
alcohol fired conversations.
yeah, right, right. So anyway, I what I did was I walked away from that account. I started another account. I said, I'm going to keep this one small, So I went from 5,000 friends to
Hmm.
500 friends, and that was better for a while. And then it just got to where, we got swept up in this whole political thing um, that happened a couple of years ago, and I just was like, you know what, I'm not going to be part of this, and I just walked away from it. So, I kind of looked at Facebook, and I guess like I look at everything in a very naive way. I sort of looked at Facebook as, if you said something on your Facebook page that I didn't agree with, and I read it, I would look at that and go, well, I don't agree with that, but
Hmm.
that's your opinion. And I would move on, right? I would never in a million years think it was my right to go on there and give you a piece of my mind about what you
Well
thought about
said.
something,
Yeah.
right? Like that would have just been, for me, completely out of
Hmm.
line. Apparently, I was the only person thinking that, right? So, anyway,
I don't think you're the only one, but yeah.
so people ask me, have asked me a lot of times, say, do you think Facebook is ruining fly fishing? I'm like, no, Facebook is ruining the world. It's only ruining fly fishing because fly fishing is part of the world,
Hmm.
and like if I had the magic wand and could shut Facebook down tomorrow, Mark Zuckerberg, hope you're listening. It
He's
would
not.
happen. Yeah, he's not. Come on, man, give yourself credit.
Yeah.
Um, but that's not up to me. All I can do is, like I said, stay in my lane. So I quit it, and fortunately, um, I have wicked Justin Pickett on my side, who is just an awesome dude and a great contributor to the site and a great friend, and runs all of the official Gink and Gasoline social media. So when you see posts on Facebook and most of the posts on Instagram, that's all Justin, and he does a great job. And he interfaces with people, and he's much better at walking away from a fight than I am. And so that's just worked out awesome. And he's been a godsend, and just major shout out and love to that dude, because he is a rocking part of the team.
Absolutely. I back that up with you guys for sure because I follow you and I know the Fly Fishing
Cool.
Insider podcast follows you and we definitely enjoy the content. So it must be hard though. With that advertising background, looking at Instagram, not engaging too much with it, going, man, this is just such an easy platform, like shooting fish in a barrel. You have a large audience, you have everything. I mean, it must be hard for you not to want to engage in the advertisement aspect of your brand. Is it? Would you,
It's easy for me to not want
yeah.
to do that. You know what I want to do? I want to spend more time fishing. That's what I want to
Well, I want to
do.
make that happen for you, Lewis, and I want it to start. I
Right
want it to
on.
start right in Georgia first. So
Yeah, it really should. Well, I'm actually going fishing tomorrow. I'm pretty excited. Dan Frazier, who's one of my contributors and is a great friend, a good dude, is a incredible carp angler and does a ton of other stuff. But he writes the carp content for G&G as well as some
mhm.
conservation stuff and all. And he has to come to Atlanta for business, so he and I are going to take the day and go float the hooch
Awesome.
tomorrow. So that'll be fun. I'm actually
That's
going to fish
cool.
Georgia
That's
tomorrow.
good.
We get this is probably another one of those things I'm not supposed to talk about, but we get a landlocked striper run in the summertime that they literally run a quarter mile from my house, and there's some, it's not like you don't come to Georgia
Yeah.
for the fishing. I mean, I just, frankly, it's, we've taken a beating with the climate and all that stuff. But on the years when we have water, and this year has been pretty good, we can get a good run of fish in there, and we can get some big fish. Last couple of seasons we haven't seen a lot of big fish, but um, good buddy of mine landed one over
Nice.
30 pounds last year, and every year the DNR shocks, if they do a shocking, I don't think they do the shocking every year, but every time they do the shocking in the river, they'll shock up a 50-pounder. You know, so the chance to put a fly in front of a 50-pound
You
fish in
better.
moving water, I'll take that any day. And it's nice, yeah, and it's nice for me because it's close to my house. I can go up. I've got a float I can do in 3 hours, so I can get a day's work in, And then, it's light till 9 o'clock. So I can get out there, get on the river at 5 or 6 o'clock, and I can do my 3 hour float. And then I just catch an Uber back up to the put in to get
Wow.
my car
Love
and come
it.
back and get the boat. I'm good.
You got it all
Yeah.
planned out.
It's urban fishing, dude. So I promised you I was going to circle back to something, and I forgot to. So I'm going to. We talked about the social media, and I made the comment that unfortunately everybody who holds a fish is not necessarily a good person. And if there is a reason, because I get my feet held to the fire on social media and in person about bringing more people into the sport of fly fishing. Like, I walked into a buddy of mine's birthday party and immediately had to answer to a handful of angry steelheaders about why I thought it was a good idea to have more people in fly fishing, right? And there's a whole lot of reasons I think that's good. For one thing, I think every motivated young kid who's able to make a living guiding, or every inspired product designer who's able to bring another product to market, or every person who, just the simple fact that the more people that buy fly rods, the lower the price of fly rods gets, and everything else in the industry, all that's good. But the main reason that I do what I do, and that I think it's important to bring people into fly fishing, is that I believe firmly in the ability of fly fishing to make you a better person. And if there is one thing this world needs right now, good Lord, it's better people.
Well said. Well said, Lewis. Just some follow up to what you were saying earlier, though. I know you talk about staying in your own lane. You talked about, people, you want to see the growth of future companies and you want to see the growth of young guides. What other advice would you have out there for, say, someone that doesn't have the audience that you have, that's just starting out their blogging career, anyone that's just kind of in that state of creating and has that passion to get a grasp within the industry? What would your advice to that person be?
Well,
Please.
I'll give you a couple of things. It's important, I think, to trust your voice. That was something that it took me a while to learn and to kind of get my feet under me. Was, when we started the site, the whole idea was that I was the photographer. I was the guy taking the pictures. I was not. I never ever put myself up as a fly fishing expert, or as that's. I don't care about that stuff. And it took a while for me to get the confidence to write about the things that I know, in a way that, that would really reach people and help them. It just took me a while to trust that voice, and that's not about being cocky about it, about having your ego all out of whack, but it's just about trusting that you have something to offer and that you have a point of view that's valid, right? Because if you're not writing from that point of view, then you're not writing in an affirmative voice, and you're not making the points that you need to make, right? There's no point in mincing your words, right? You got to get out there and say what you have to say, especially when it comes to opinion pieces. And that's one of the things Gink and Gasoline does, a whole lot of how-to and tips and stuff like that. But we also do a whole lot of just experiential stuff. And I think that's one of the things that people come to the site for, but because they recognize that it's different. Like, not too long ago, it was my birthday, and I just wanted to write about something I wanted to write about, and my wife and I have been going to the ASO, the Atlanta Symphony, for over 30 years. And I had just had we'd seen Beethoven's Ninth, and I'd had this real epiphany about Beethoven's Ninth. And I was like, fuck it, it's my birthday, I'm writing about Beethoven. Maybe I'll get around to fly fishing, maybe I won't, but here's what I got to say. And I thought, I've lost my mind. I've clearly, this was clearly a bridge too far. What was I thinking, right? And I can't tell you the response I got from that. Not just the comments, but emails and stuff, that people loved that post. They said, if you don't understand this, you don't understand fly fishing. I'm like, well, cool. It reached a chord with people somewhere, but it takes a while to learn to trust your voice, to go out on a limb like that, and it's tough because you have got to be
very important,
honest, and you've got to be authentic, right? Yeah, exactly. Right. Because people know bullshit, and nobody's got time for bullshit. There's plenty of bullshit in the world. Nobody's got time for that. Right. So you've got to be yourself, But you also have to be interesting, right? If you're going to be yourself, that self has to be somebody I want to listen to, right? And it's not that I believe that I think everybody has something interesting to say, but I think it just comes back to trusting that voice and trusting in what you have to say. And the last thing that I will say on that subject is something that I'm sure you know Marshall Cutchin, who runs Midcurrent, who's a good friend and was a huge help to me when I was starting the site out. Just great dude. And Marshall's smarter than me. He went to Harvard. He's educated. I went to art school. And Marshall told me early on, he said, anything you publish on the site, just be sure that it's of use to your reader. And that's where I think a lot of people go wrong is I think it really comes down to why you're doing it, right? If you're doing it because you want to be fishing famous, or you're doing it because you want to get a bunch of free fishing gear or whatever it is, it is not going to happen. And I think the reason, really, that a lot of the reason anyway that Gink and Gasoline was successful from the standpoint of the support we got from the industry, from the manufacturers, from the fly shops, from the people working in the industry, was the fact that we'd been in the business for years. And you go to IFTD every year, and there's always this fresh crop of young dudes, mostly dudes, some women. Unfortunately, it's mostly dudes who show up, and they're all fired up about it, and they're going to be the next great big thing in the fly fishing industry, and everybody there is awesome to them and super inviting, and takes time with them and all that stuff. And then they wait to see if they come back, because all the people who have worked in the fly fishing industry for years, they know that it's like the gym, like January 1st, that the gym's full. There's all these new people signing up, right? But see how many are left in April, right?
Right. In February, there's 2.
And everybody in the fly fishing industry is savvy to that, right? So if you want to be in the industry, there's plenty of room for you. You just have to keep showing up, and you have to keep doing the work. It really is about doing the work.
So with that said, for the IFTD, have you seen a lot of brands come in like a hurricane and then go out like a tumbleweed, or what?
I wouldn't characterize it that way. Really, what I have seen is brands coming and going like the tide. You see, I mean, they're pillars. There are just pillars of fly fishing that never falter.
Exactly.
But then there are a lot of brands that just they have a moment in the sun, they're making some great stuff, and then somebody makes some business decisions and the tide goes back out, and you don't hear about them for a while, and then they come rushing back in. And like Ross Reels would be a great example. Where Ross was a great brand, and then they kind of went back and receded, and then Orvis bought them, and they came back and they were bought again, and they're doing great stuff these days, right?
Yeah.
Thomas and Thomas is another example of that. I mean, God, that company's been through so many owners and gyrations, and it's that is more what I've seen than people come raging in and then blowing out like tumbleweeds. The unfortunate thing that I have seen where IFDD is concerned is just this ongoing struggle for the relevance of the show. And so many people, it used to be a huge show, and so many people came, and it got smaller and smaller. And then they threw in with iCast for a few years, which was really cool, and I enjoyed. And now they're back out, and they've changed the time of year. And I think everybody's waiting this year to see that it's either going to be a huge improvement, or it's going to be, well, who knows, I'm personally a big supporter of the show. I'm on record with that. I think it's a great thing. I think if you're in the industry, you should go and you should be there. It's been great for me. But not everybody feels that way.
And we'll definitely see you at the show.
Hey man, can I make a small digression?
Yes.
Because I'm sitting here in my kitchen at home, and Josie, my dog, has come in and asking to go out to pee. Hey Joe, come here, babe. And Josie is a Bahamian potcake. If you haven't read about her on the site, she is a wild dog, not a stray dog, but a straight up wild dog that I caught as a puppy in the Bahamas and brought home. and she is the smartest and most wonderful dog. I'm about to let her out the door on her own to go do her business, and she'll come back. Um, and those dogs have just a terrible, terrible situation down there, and they really need help. And a couple of folks who've come on hosted trips with me have taken them home, and everyone who's ever brought one home has said it's the best dog they've ever had. So if you are looking for a dog, there are actually some rescues. There's the Royal Bahamian Potkick Rescue that's right here in Georgia, that bring dogs over from the Bahamas, and you can adopt one. So if you're looking for a dog, you should seriously look at a Bahamian Potkick. They're the best dogs in the world, and they need help.
And you know what? To further that up, it's a great opportunity for a guy to sell his wife on. Hey, let's go get a dog and take a hosted trip. Take the
Exactly.
hosted trip
And do
the
some
bone fishing, take out the dog, come back. I like it. Lewis, I definitely appreciate everything. What's next for you?
In what sense?
What's next for the brand? What's next for you in the sense of the growth? Where are you going? You've got, the TV, you got the photography, you got the blogs, you got the hosted trips, you got the revenue coming in. You got the teaching of the courses. You've given back so much. What's next?
I am very excited that we are right now crunching away on a site redesign. It's been way overdue, and there have been some issues with some technical issues with getting it done. But I found a great developer, and he's building the next version of the site. And there's going to be more pages and more content. And I don't want to talk specifically about what's going on, but it's going to be a much more interactive, more community-based thing, which I'm very excited about. So that's going to be cool. And we're working real hard to increase the video presence on the site, because I think there are a lot of people that dig the videos. And my videographer had a baby here just a few months ago, and so we've kind of lost him for the immediate future while he does the right thing there. But we're trying to step up and keep that coming. And we've been talking for some time, and I'm having a little drift boat meeting tomorrow about a possible podcast, which you and I talked about. And I don't know how I'm going to find the hours in the day to do it, but I enjoy doing it. I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy the kind of conversations that we're having right now.
Well, you're good at it, though. You're natural.
I was just because I don't think about it too much, I guess. But I like doing it, and so that's going to be a cool thing. We're on the hosted trip program. My whole idea behind the hosted trips is just trying to make things accessible, right? Like if Gink and Gasoline has a mission statement, it's to make fly fishing inclusive rather than exclusive. I want to make fly fishing accessible to as many people as possible, both technically and from an affordability standpoint, right? So we're working on some new domestic locations for hosted trips where we can go and do some trout trips and stuff here in the country that'll be less expensive and won't involve quite as much travel. And I'm excited about that. So you can look for that coming up in the next couple of years, or in the next season, I hope. What else am I forgetting about? And hopefully at some point in there, maybe I'll get some sleep. I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you got it pretty covered already with your busy schedule and adding more to your plate for sure. You know what?
Hang on 2 seconds, Greg, and let my dog back in.
You bet. That was quick.
Thanks, Josie. Appreciates that bathroom break.
Yeah, no worries. Lewis, before I let you go, I want to ask you the one question really quickly. What's something that you would change within the fly fishing industry?
Oh, yeah. I'm pretty well on record with this. So I'm going to go with my general response. I would like to see the ego and the posturing and the hate come out of fly fishing. I really would. I think that I touched on that a minute ago, and I talked about fly fishing being inclusive rather than exclusive. I remember when I was, getting into it and going in the fly shop and trying to get information and stuff, and it was just this whole, cool kids table attitude, and like nobody wants to help people get into fly fishing. I shouldn't say that. That has changed. That is getting a lot better. And I think that's changing a lot as you see younger people coming into the sport too. But it used to be such a closed club, and I hate that. And so that's kind of been my mission is I think that, like I said before, I think fly fishing has as good a shot as anything of actually making you a better person,
Mm-hmm.
right? And even if it's not, making you a better person in your interactions out in the world, it can certainly pull you through some dark times. It has certainly pulled me through some very dark times in my life,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think everybody deserves that, you know, and we've got a long way to go, and I honestly think that it benefits us all. The more people are out there with a fly rod, the more support there is for the industry, the more people care about the rivers and about the environment, the more people are going to be speaking out against things like Pebble Mine.
Mm-hmm.
It benefits all of us. Um, and there's plenty of room there to grow. We're a pretty white dude sport, and Lord, we haven't even tapped white dudes. We're even like a small selective group within the white dude subset. So there's lots of
Yeah.
room to grow there, and I think it benefits all of us for that to happen. So, and I think the main thing that keeps that away is ego, and it's because people want to. A lot of people start fly fishing, or I don't know if they start fly fishing because they think it makes them cool, or they start feeling cool because they're doing it, and they can only judge their coolness against other people's coolness. So some guy comes along who doesn't know as much, and they rip him or they tease him about something, and he starts to get his ego up, and then he doesn't want to act like he doesn't know something, so he doesn't ask questions, so he doesn't learn the right way to do things, and it stifles the dialogue right off the bat, and it's not about giving away your spots or showing up to the river and there not being room to fish or anything like that. It's just about helping people along in their journey. And let's face it, most people are not going to be out there fishing 100,
Absolutely
200
not.
days a
No.
year, right? Just let them get out let them teach their kids, let them keep the sport alive, and I think the more we can encourage that, the better off we all are. So I think the root of it is ego. So if it was me, that's the one thing I would change about fly fishing is less
I
ego,
agree,
more
Lewis.
fun.
With that said, let's end it on a high note. I want to thank
Right on, man. Thank you, Greg.
No worries. I want to thank you, Lewis, today, and I want to make sure that I put everything. Check the show notes. I'm going to put all the details that Lewis has mentioned in the show as well, and I want to thank the listeners as well. Thanks, Lewis.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I really like what you do. You do great work here. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Thank you.